So check this out. There are certain things that leaders have to do in order for a team to be good. Do the Jaguars have the type of people to do that? I'm going to answer that question for you here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. We are also free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Make sure you go over and take a look. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, and then hit the bell so that you receive a notification each and every time that we drop an episode. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, go to that platform every day to check in and make sure you don't miss an episode of Locked On Jaguars, because it is your team every day, and we will drop every day just to make sure you don't miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So we're talking about leadership today. We want to find out, well, that's one of the things that we're talking about. It is one of the characteristics that good football teams have. So here's what we're going to do. By the time we get to segment 3, I'm going to tell you what all of those things are. And one of those things that we'll talk about in segment 3 is one of those other things that you need is unexpected producers. You need unexpected producers. This is all about whether or not the Jaguars have what it takes. This doesn't necessarily mean to win a championship this year, but this means to continue that progression towards actually competing for championships with an S, right? Unexpected producers, you're going to need those. Segment 2 will identify leadership. My buddy Sam, I always use motivation from conversations that I have, especially with people that follow sports closely and kind of think the way I do it and do other podcasts. He mentioned something about a conversation he had talking to some former college players. And I wanted to use that today. It says there's a difference between the face of a franchise and the team leaders. Many times the quarterback is the face of the franchise, but he's not the day-to-day team leader that people think he is. And that was very, very interesting. And I want to take a look at that because I do think it takes a whole bunch of people to get that thing to be what it's supposed to be. We'll look at that. But first, traits of a contender. We've heard us talk about 2 of those traits. One is identifying leaders and leadership, leaders with an S. The other one is having unexpected producers. I got a big old list here that I'm checking down, and I'm going down of things, that traits of teams that are really good leaders. All right, so obviously you need depth. Okay, you need depth, but depth ain't no good if your starters aren't good enough to win. So you need starters. We have used the last couple of months of draft and free agency to talk about whether or not the players they acquired are good enough when combined with the players that they already have on the team. If those groups of people combined together are good enough. But the thing is there's more to it than their physical ability. We know that. We just have to focus on other stuff now. Leadership, unexpected producers, one heartbeat, one identity. That falls under leadership a little bit to me. When you have the identity and the heartbeat and you have the very few voices, but even when you hear everybody else's voices, they say all of the same things. That means everybody's pretty much on the same page. And then their play will be indicative of that too. It won't just be about a bunch of lip service. So some of the things that are characteristics of a good team. Notice I haven't said the absence of drama, because that is not one of the things that will necessarily represent. Like, the presence of drama doesn't mean that, okay, this is not a good team. No, in a lot of cases, the presence of drama has actually been an indication that this is a good team. 2017 had it, but you didn't see it as much as you did in 2018 here in Jacksonville because there was a difference. Winning. So winning and will hide and mask a lot of things that go on with these teams. A whole bunch of it. When they were 8-3 last year, you didn't hear a bunch of complaining. But they literally were playing the exact same way when they lost all those games and ended up having to fight for their lives to get to the playoffs. And they were 9-8. They ain't look any different, in my opinion. The only game that I can say, that's not necessarily true. They beat the crap out of somebody last year, and I'm trying to figure out who it was. It wasn't Atlanta. If they had rolled Atlanta, I don't think Ryan Nielsen would be here, but they whooped somebody good. But then they actually won a real good competitive game against Houston. So, but other than that, they really, for about 14 games last year, the Jaguars looked the exact same. The difference is they won about 8 of them. Well, they won about 6 of them. Well, no, they won 8 of them and they lost the other 6. So winning will mask a lot of stuff. But how do you win? First of all, you win with the players that you got. You win by staying healthy. You win by having depth behind that. But you also have to win by having a plan. You have to win by having a plan. You have to win by having an identity. You have to win by having a one voice. And you also have to have a little bit of continuity between what your coaches say and what your players say, specifically in the media. Therefore, I got something I need to get off my chest before we get to the identifying the leaders on the team. Jacksonville is mild when it comes to media relations with players. It's mild compared to New York and Chicago. I would say Miami and Atlanta, but I don't think people really give a damn because they're so busy on South Beach and doing other stuff and eating chicken wings at 5 o'clock in the morning at strip clubs in Atlanta. I don't think they're really paying attention, that fans actually pay attention to the discourse sometimes that can go on between media and players. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we talked about on the pod where my colleague Mia O'Brien said the other day, she spoke about how she had discussed with somebody, I don't know if it was Ryan Nielsen, the new DC, or someone else, but that she basically said that Nielsen inquired how often did the players discuss alignment in 2023, and they said they didn't. And I guess I don't think Mia was being negative about the year to come. I think what Mia was really doing was trying to add a sense of positivity and optimism and hope that things have changed, right? I'm not saying she was right or wrong. She ain't never wrong about saying what she said. I'm not saying whether or not they actually had those meetings, because my friend Demetrius did some follow-up, not necessarily to check on Mia, but obviously it's your job to also to report on stuff. So when you go out and try to find some information about some stuff, you ask your sources, probably a former coach or a player or both. It's like, nah, we went we Wednesday practices weren't full speed. So we talked about alignment all the time. So it wasn't a gotcha moment on any part. It was just that guys gave their interpretation, whoever those sources gave their interpretation of whatever they thought happened. At some point, somebody's lying, though, but still, it's not necessarily on the media. And then Evan Ingram comes out, and Evan Ingram gets on Demetrius. So why are you bringing it up? Almost as if it's like, what are you bringing it up for now? It's almost as if I'm going to give him a pass because I don't think he knew why Demetrius did what he said. He responded to what happened the day before with Mia O'Brien. So he was just, like I said, it wasn't necessarily a gotcha moment, but it was adding his context. Like, look, I looked into this also. Somebody else said something differently. So it's more or less like you can get two dudes that was on the same team and they can say one thing or another. You can make words sound and mean like whatever you want them to think. But where I thought Evan Ingram was a little bit off was he came to a conversation that was, when he said, why did you post this? The answer was in just doing some research. I just want to know, man, do you have guys' phone number? Can you text them? And we could air that out and understand, no, bro, this is in response to something else. This is a response to saying that dudes weren't studying last year on how to align up. And I think really at the end of the day, it's not really that important because it happened before. What we think about is what you're going to do now. You can learn from what you did in the past. So what you're going to do now. responding that way to a media member about something, and now after the fact you look totally wrong. See, that's kind of leadership we need to get away from. And I mentioned that yesterday. And this ain't a smack at Evan Ingram, because I think what Evan Ingram is really trying to do is take up for his team. But I think Demetrius was too. And I think Mia was just trying to make people feel optimistic about this and giving information that she had heard from somewhere else. It's real easy to criticize media until you have to do it for a living. That's all I'm going to say. But leadership, we have to identify the leaders. And I'll segue to this. I'm going to tell you right now, if you got sensitive skin, you can't be a leader of any football team. Don't be all sensitive like that and snapping on people. And so I'm going to tell you right now, the leader on the field is Trevor Lawrence. Off the field, I don't necessarily know. And I'm going to get into it because my man Sam gave me a real good definition that a phrase that I live by here since he told me. It's right. The face of the franchise and the team leaders are not necessarily the same person. I'll explain the differences here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, I got to let y'all know about FanDuel, man. FanDuel is in full effect along with the NBA and the NHL right now in the playoffs because everybody's putting their best foot forward. You can too, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Any winning $5 bet, you get $150 in bonus bets to play with. You can use it on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Now, look, I know sometimes you get afraid of these NBA games and setting your parlays up and your rosters up too fast because you don't know who's going to play. You don't have to worry about that now because guess what? It's playoff time and there is no more load management. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot and moment count. You get $150 on spreads, money lines, and props for new customers. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Second segment here on Locked On Jaguars. I was about to say second and final segment. How's that? We do 3 segments, not second and final segment. It's the second and second segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. You can catch me at Shop Talking Wig on Twitter, by the way. And as I look at these rosters and look at all of the new additions, and I'm thinking about all of the things that should go right for the Jaguars, some of the traits that we think contenders have. All teams that win are never all the same, but they do have some of the similar characteristics, right? Some teams lead with offense, some teams lead with defense, some teams lead with scheme, other teams lead with just having players that can play above the X's and O's, and coaches just keep things simple for them. So they don't all look alike. They're not all the same. It's not like you can go to a toy store and say, give me a championship uniform, and it's going to be the same thing. It's just not that way. They all, look and feel different. But they do have certain things that this even applies not even team to team within a sport. This applies team to team and even individual to individual who are winners that play different sports. They all seem to have just this feel for the moment. And you really need that in big games and at crunch time, right? Especially in playoff games, because there's no tomorrow. Where does that come from? That comes from repetition. That comes from knowing who you are. And that comes from, everybody calls it an identity, but the way I look at it is this. When you wake up and you go look in the mirror, you know exactly who you're going to see every day, right? Well, that's not based on what you feel like. That doesn't change. Who you are as a football team should change. It might not work today like it worked yesterday, but who you are and who you want to be, this ultimate, the optimal effort, the optimal identity that you want to have, the way you want to be, you should be able to be that all the time. And the teams that win the most are able to be themselves more than anybody else. Identity, leadership, obviously talent, right? But if you ain't got that right now, you can't get it. That's why we always say here on Locked On Jaguars that ain't no starting left tackles just walking around the streets this time of year for everybody that just wants to cut Cam Robinson. Because if you do that, he's going to be one of them. That's just why he's a starting top 20 NFL left tackle that's going to be walking around on the streets, and it's very, very rare that happens. So that's why these teams don't let those guys go. We talked yesterday about Doug Peterson having to really, he's got to be the thermostat, man. He has to really be the catalyst for everything that's going to go right, even with the attitudes of this team. How much talk in the offseason have we had about people resting on their laurels? And it started with the club, and we thought they put the team to sleep by themselves because they did not have a plan to move forward. So who are the leaders on this team to make sure that things that happened last year in that department don't happen again? Trevor Lawrence is obviously one of them because he's the quarterback. But the reason why, my man gave me the reasons why quarterbacks are never really the team leaders behind the scenes. On the field, ball is in his hands more than anybody. Talks to the coach more than anybody. The success of the team depends on that player more than on his play. That guy's play doesn't mean that everybody else is not important, but the quarterback's play, good and bad, has a bigger impact on the game and the outcome than anybody else. We know that. But with somebody that has that responsibility, when they're always with the coaches, when they're always in the quarterback room, when they're always working with the OC with the game plan, when they're always dealing with the media, when they're always making sure that they have their reps and they're eating correctly and they're taking care of themselves, and they're always the focus of the national media. When do they actually have the time to be talking to their teammates all the time about whatever the hell they got going on? When do they have time to call and pep talk? And so you see the point. The point is a lot of times the leadership comes from the subgroups of the team and not necessarily the guy that's the face of the franchise. The true leadership might be your safety, might be your Mike linebacker, might be a combination of them, and then two of your linemen that are veterans. Maybe the guy that's the best player on that side of the ball, and maybe the guy that's the oldest player. So you can start now taking people and substitute them in. Okay, I remember Calais was that. Yeah, that's Josh Allen he's describing. Okay, yeah, that was Tyreek Gibson or Tayshaun Gibson. I remember that. That's Posluszny he's talking about. See, that's Telvin Smith when he was out here and he was the leader of the team. So it's not necessarily the fact that you're in that spot, but it's who you are, right? So that's why the quarterback, because he's the face of the franchise, is not necessarily the leader of the team. And we don't know that because all we see is who they present to us for the most part to do the talking. Maybe media people do. I'm speaking as a fan, but media people, we see it behind the scenes. You know who does the talking. One of the most vocal people on that team the last couple of years has been Roy Robinson Harris. Y'all probably would have never knew that, did you? Probably never known. Voted team captain. What you'd have never known that when you go in the locker room, one of the loudest guys in there and one of the most forceful people to talk to is Roy Robinson Harris. See, it never looks the way it looks from the outside when you get behind the veil a little bit. It's always different. Do they have enough of those dudes, though? I think with the addition of, and then they really have pointed out to you and been transparent that they really made it a point to go get guys who are leaders and go get guys who are winners and then draft guys that loved it. And this is one of the other things that we have been talking about for years that y'all know my term is called football playing Jessies. Go get guys that love the process. And Doug hinted at it last year when he was like, what are you doing when you're not here? Do you love it? Are you chomping at the bit to get back? That's what it's all about. That's what cancels and separates all their differences. That's what cancels and separates the background histories. That's what cancels and separates all of this other stuff that we all get mad at each other about that makes the football locker room so different. So you got 32 teams. Where do you line up? Where do you stack up? Do you have it? One of the most underrated things about trying to look at a football team and assess where things come from, and one of the things that provides you the biggest surprise once the league starts, and it's always fun. I think about James Robinson when I think about this, and that is the unexpected producers. All teams that win have this guy or guys. Who is it and who can it be? So they had James Robinson a couple of years ago as an unexpected producer. He was the only one, though. The team wasn't very good. And it turns out once he got hurt And you can be an unexpected producer for the worst team in the league. Doesn't carry the same weight as being a producer for a team that's trying to contend for something. But still, we ain't going to slam James Robinson. But that is what I'm going to be looking for this year as we come out. I'm going to go back a little bit and try to look and see who those guys were the last couple of years, too. Might surprise you when we think about it. I also have to let you know, though, about Locked On Sports Today. If you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and have to turn down the volume with all that shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, man, we're going to run it down here and talk about places and people that can give the Jaguars another element that good teams always have, and that is an unexpected producers. A look back over the past couple of years and a look ahead to see who the Jaguars can get that kind of production from. We'll talk about it here in segment 3, Locked On Jaguars. Monopoly Go, man. That is the game. All of these holidays are coming up, and you guys need to get in on Monopoly Go because it is so much fun, and it is an updated version of one of the classic games of my childhood. I know. If you're a competitive person like me, you can team up with your family and friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome picks and prizes you unlock. That means until you come and take all of this stuff away from them and you get a chance to brag about it, right? That's right. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. The game is on, man. You can play a single game or be involved in multiple boards, and the people don't even have to be in your house. They can be all over the place. Monopoly Go is the absolute truth. Download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Right now, it's Monopoly Go. Third and final segment here of Locked On Jaguars. It's Hump Day. It's your team every day, and it is Hump Day. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars and the Locked On Podcast Network. Man, I'm looking at these unexpected contributions, the positive ones, right? I'm not going to lie. In 2022, the Jaguars got some really, really good stellar play the year they made the playoff run. I wouldn't say it was unexpected in terms of team expectations and what a person was paid to do, but it was unexpected expectations or unexpected production based on what fans' expectations were, and that's Zay Jones. And I'm saying this because Zay is out there right now looking for a job, and a lot of times we don't really give appreciation to people. We gave him his flowers the other day for what he did, because what he did, he actually represents, in my opinion, what has to happen. And sometimes it's sad. In order to elevate, you're going to have guys that help lift you, and then those guys are going to go, and you got to replace them with other people. And that hurts worse as you're going up, by the way, because those guys, it doesn't hurt worse. It doesn't hurt as bad when you're replacing dudes and you're replacing them, even though they were productive, y'all were losing. No, it really does hurt when you do it the other way, because it's like, man, you wanted that dude to see it through. You know, they were part of the thing that started. So Zay Jones really did in 2022. To me, he had the best year of his career. And you can also say the same thing about Christian Kirk. They were paid, and it wasn't supposed to be unexpected from where they were paid, but it was unexpected because we didn't expect that. We didn't expect them to play that well, but they absolutely did. Last year, it may have been Evan Ingram, and we mentioned him earlier, right? Evan Ingram had over 100 balls. Evan Ingram was all over the place, catching passes every single week, being an outlet for Trevor Lawrence. We're going to really talk about what he didn't do very well. And it's not because they may not have asked him. He wasn't a seam killer, and they don't probably ask him to do that. Maybe it's not in the design of the offense, or maybe they don't think it fits in his skill set. But they've been getting a lot of unexpected production from people that were paid to do things that we didn't expect them to do. But now, as things get older and the scrutiny goes up, it's going to change a little bit. It's going to change a little bit. And you're now going to start seeing, at first, the whole draft and development thing was cool, but then it's not. But that also still needs to be a part of what this team does. So when you're a draft and development team and you use all of these draft picks and you have all of this value on these picks, the reason why people give Trent a hard time because Trent wants to hold on to these picks so much, but then the picks never turn out. So people are like, why are you doing that? Right. But if the picks hit and you're always using picks that turn out on day 2 and day 3 that turn out to be something, and the ultimate value is showed in those picks, then people will understand. There were people saying they wanted Balker to trade all the picks for veterans. They say they don't want him to screw it up. Right? So what happens is when you can start naming draft picks, especially when you can start naming day 2 and 3 picks, mainly day 3 picks, day 3 picks that are able to be unexpected producers, but not for a bad team, for a team that is right there they're fighting for their division in the last game of the season for the last 2 years. So they're trying to make this other step. There is nothing, I believe, other than staying healthy that can help you more than getting some unexpected production from a dude that ain't making a whole bunch of money. I think for my money, that is going to be this year, Jarian Jones, even though he was a day 2 pick as a 3rd rounder. I think you're going to see a tremendous, tremendous value with Jarian Jones. I think from a free agent standpoint, it's Devin Duvernay. I think these are the guys that have probably the best chance of giving them unexpected production. Now with Duvernay, in his new kicking game with these new rules, he also has a lot to live up to with Jamal Agnew. But besides all of that, I think he can set himself up really, really proper-like and real nice and give you something from the line of scrimmage with 2 or 3 plays a game too, because he's bigger than Jamal Agnew and he won't fumble the ball. We all admit that Agnew was electrifying, but every now and then you had to hold your breath because you did not know if he was going to protect the ball or not. I think those are the 2 places where you can get unexpected producers. Now you say, well, Wig, they signed one in free agent and the other was a 3rd round pick. That's not that unexpected. For a team that won 19 games the last 2 years, with our history here in Jacksonville, yeah, it is, because I can bring up the name Brenton Strange for you right now, and then I can name another dude that didn't get a whole bunch of money in free agency over the last 2 or 3 years that ain't done a thing. All right, so let's not take it for granted that if they get serious production out of, a 3rd round pick, a guy you hope that produces, but sometimes we get them and they don't. And then off of a guy that's going to be your 4th receiver, if he produces, because they're going to give multiple opportunities, and plus with these new rules, I like the fact that his body's a little bit bigger and he comes from a winning organization. Y'all can let me know what you think about that. But the traits of a contender are having players that are leaders, having an identity from your coaching staff that we piggybacked on yesterday, getting unexpected production out of players, having leaders in layers, knowing the leadership of the team isn't necessarily also the face of the franchise. All right, man, make sure y'all tap back in and check in with me here on Locked On Jaguars. And please also make sure you poke your head in on Locked On and check out the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it is also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, man, until next time, you guys hang tough. Check in with Locked On Jaguars every single day because it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen, and we'll see you next time.